We're live. Motivation morning. Go get your projects done. We've started a new week. It's time to get more stuff done. I'm going to see if I can do some painting. I'm excited about eventually getting back down to West Tech and getting the 2.2 turbo up and running. I'm going to do more LS stuff. And maybe one other thing, either the Ford or the 8.1 would be cool to get some more testing done on the 8.1, because running the 8.1 is essentially like running an LS, the same thing, same harness and all that stuff. So it's fairly easy to hook up. It uses a Chevy bell housing and all we have flywheels and all that stuff for it. So it works out really good. Today, we're going to talk about what happens if I have an engine family that I'm running, a motor family that I'm running, and there isn't a lot of aftermarket support. Because let's face it, the aftermarket doesn't, for whatever reason, they decide in their grand wisdom to embrace things like, we have 20 or 30 or 40 different intake manifolds for an LS. But if you look at other engine families, it's not supported like that. So if you look at the 1UZ engines, the Toyotas, or the Nissan engines, the 5.6 liter, is that what they are? The VKs. There are lots of other combinations that don't share that same sort of, like the 400M is a perfect example on the Ford side. So there's lots of stuff where they don't have the same level of aftermarket support. So we don't have a bunch of things to choose from. But that doesn't mean we don't have things to choose from. We can still do modifications on that motor. We just have to use a little bit more ingenuity. We have to do, whatever cylinder heads it has on it, you could do your own porting. You can certainly take a look at the valve sizes and see if other valves will work on them by turning the head down, if the diameter is the same, the length is the same. That all of that stuff just takes a little bit more effort and searching online on your part and learning about your particular motor, because a lot of times there are other things that work. There are other rockers that you might be able to utilize. There are other valves, as I said, you might be able to utilize. You can always port the factory intake manifold. Camshafts, if all else fails, you can certainly have stuff reground. We're doing that on the Atlas motor, and we've done it on other combinations as well, where we just take the factory camshaft, send it to the guys at Schneider or other cam regrinders, and they'll regrind it, smaller base circle. We need to adjust for that either by shimming a lash adjuster, or there are other ways. We can put lash caps on the valves and stuff. So there are other ways to get you to work around that. So you can make stuff happen, even if there are not 15 or 20 intake manifolds available for you. So you can still get stuff done. You can make your own intake manifolds. You can make a shorter version of it. If it's a V8 and it's a typical kind of dual plane V8 intake manifold from the factory, you can cut the divider out, you can port it, you can port match it, you can do all of that. So there's always something that you can do. And then even and you can raise the compression, you can mill the head, you can mill the deck of the block. You can certainly get custom pistons done for it, although now it seems like it takes forever for a lot of that stuff to get done. But you can raise the compression, all of those things. There may not be dedicated stroker kits for what you're trying to do, but you may be able to offset grind the crank and do your math and figure out, okay, I could do that and use this rod because it's the right width and it's the right length, and I could use this piston from another application that has the correct pin height, or a custom one that has the right pin height with my combination of offset ground, stroker crank, custom stroker crank, and rod assembly. So there are lots of tricky things that you can do. But barring all of that, if all that you wanted to do was something quick and simple, there's always two things. One of them is nitrous and one of them is boost. So you can always add nitrous to any motor. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how much power it makes. Whatever it does, you can make it better. And the nice thing about either one of those, and we'll talk about both of them starting with nitrous, but either one of those are going to add what can be considered a significant amount of power. So, and whether significant means that you have a 100 horsepower motor and you're adding 25 to it, or 50, or it's a 500 horsepower motor and you're adding 100, 200, 300, horsepower worth of nitrous to it. All of that is a significant amount of power. And that's the cool thing about nitrous. And if you haven't ever had nitrous in your life on a vehicle, you should. Everyone should experience that at least once, even if it's just a small shot. The reason that nitrous is so cool is that when you go to run it, and you have it set up and you engage it, you feel it. It's a significant change in power. And depending on how low you activate it, a 100 shot, for instance, could be 100 foot-pounds of torque if it's at 5252. It could be less torque than that if it's higher than that. But the thing is, if you activate it lower than that, the torque gain that you get may be 150 foot-pounds or 200 foot-pounds, depending on how brave you are about activating at lower engine speeds. And so whatever you do, even if you add, let's say you were to add 100 or 150 foot-pounds of torque at 3,000 or 3,500 RPM, that's going to be a significant change in the acceleration rate of your vehicle. It's going to knock, and especially on the lower horsepower stuff, if you have like a stock 5-liter Mustang that's a 250 horsepower deal, and you add 100 shot to that, you're easily going to knock a second off of your quarter mile. So it's a big change in now the performance of your vehicle. Back in the day, I won lots and lots of races just having nitrous on an otherwise stock or kind of mild 5-liter Mustang. It made a pretty good car, which was fairly sporty back in the day, but it made a pretty good car into a really good car. It wasn't supercar level of stuff, but changing your acceleration rate in the quarter mile and adding 10 miles an hour makes it a different car. And now it is in a whole nother league of performance modification. So a guy would have to do a lot of modifications to his Mustang to equal that, to get a vehicle to do that. It'd be heads, cam, and intake manifold, all that stuff, if you wanted to try to gain, that kind of gain on a combination. But with nitrous, it's an easy like push button deal, and you'll get addicted to it, and then you'll be mad whenever the nitrous runs out. You'll have to go fill the bottle, and then you could get 2 bottles and rotate it and all that stuff. But it is a fun deal. I've used it a lot. I've used it on obviously at the drag strip, and I've used it on road courses. I've used it on oval courses. I've used it in a lot of places that you wouldn't think that it would work well. We've run it at Bonneville, and when it's applied properly, and it has a fairly wide margin of safety, you really have to do something fairly extreme, because there's all of these things about, oh no, nitrous will blow your motor up. No, it won't. It's actually very, very cold. Your motor likes it a lot, as long as you supply the additional fuel. And that's usually what happens is a guy won't have enough fuel supply for it. He won't have enough injector size or enough fuel flow from the pump, or the solenoid it didn't activate because he didn't wire it correctly. Whatever the thing is, we always test the systems, do a dry test on them, make sure both of them are activating the same. We make sure that we have the right amount of pressure and that we have the right jetting in them. And then so when you go out and run them, you're just nailing throttle and adding a bunch of power. And boost is the same way. There is no engine family. I mean, if it has stock exhaust manifolds and it has exhaust going out from the stock exhaust manifolds, you can plumb a turbo in there. You can wire the exhaust together. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be equal length. They don't even have to be the same size tubing, and you can get a turbo going to that. And even if you run, 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds, whatever, you're talking about the potential of having a 50% gain in power from wherever you were, whatever you were starting with, whether you're starting with a 1-liter, Chevy Sprint Geo Metro motor, or you're starting with a junkyard big block Chevy or big block Dodge or whatever it is. Whatever you're starting with, you're going to be able to improve it dramatically. And then even more so if you add other modifications like we were talking about. If you do a camshaft is almost always the first thing that I would do. Some applications want more head flow. The 5-liter Mustang is a good example. Some of the other smog era V8s could benefit from cylinder head stuff. But if you put a camshaft in there and you have if it's a carbureted deal, a dual plane intake manifold, and you add boost to it, obviously really good things are going to happen. And then on the EFI side, you need to work out being able to control the ECU. But the nice thing is there are fairly inexpensive ECUs. We talked a bunch about that last night on the live feed. There are a bunch of available ECUs that you can use, and you just have to have big enough injectors and get the tune correct, and which you have to do with any kind of modification anyway. Whether if you were just sticking a camshaft in your motor, it has to be tuned properly. Otherwise, the gains that you get, you're going to have several things that could happen. One, the gain that you get from the camshaft are not going to be very good because it doesn't have the right amount of air, fuel, and timing. If it doesn't have enough fuel, then obviously damage can result. And the same thing with nitrous and especially boost. If you don't have enough, if you haven't turned the timing down and you don't have enough fuel supply, you're going to know because you're going to hurt it. But that's not the fault of the power adder that you're applying to it. That's on you for not giving it enough fuel. So it's very important. But no matter what it is, like I said, you can do that to any sort of combination. And whether you add nitrous or boost, you can have some fairly significant gains in power, and it's all beneficial. So even if you're one of those other guy, you can get some good power from it. And boost, in fact, is one of the things I remember way back looking at stuff and being upset that people weren't making actual turbo kits, design turbo kits for all of these applications. Well, why don't they have one for a fast or a Metro XFI? Why doesn't somebody make a kit for that? Well, and now we just know that there doesn't have to be a kit. You just make it yourself. It's not really that hard. Anybody that can do welding or learn how to weld can weld up a U pipe for it. And maybe that there's something already out there, like the Sprint turbo would be a perfect example, although that stuff is probably more difficult to find. But it's not hard to run exhaust up to a turbo somewhere. You can just loop the exhaust under the motor and stick the turbo. Oh, look over here. There's a perfect spot over here once I put the battery in the trunk, where it should be anyway, for improved handling and traction if it's a rear-wheel drive car. Put the turbo right over here, run the exhaust down, run it in. It's all pretty easy stuff. So no matter what you have, there are always ways to make it better and have more power. And in these cases with the power adder stuff, fairly significant changes in power too. And that's what makes it super fun. So what do you guys got going on this morning? What kind of projects are you working on? Make sure to get those projects done. Let's see what we got going on. Nissan V8, yes, I do like those. I just wish that we had the ability to run stuff easily. 25 horsepower, you got both. Yeah, that's good. To help spool, that's good. And that's the thing, when you have a turbo and especially after you put a turbo on something and you drive it around a lot and you're like, yeah, if I could get this thing to spool better, that would be cool. And then you add nitrous to that, then it's a whole nother ballgame. Overbuilt. Yeah, you can also weld lobes up, and you can do billet cams, although those are both less common and more expensive than regrinding the one that you have. JE is 10 to 16 weeks. 16 weeks is a lot. Problem might come into ignition control on Saki ECUs could be a problem. My ice cream drag van is bottle fed with a NOS mini controller. 250 dual plate, but only using one system right now. 250 shots a lot. That always helps. I've used Ross pistons before with good success. I think I might have used Ross pistons on some of the Cleveland stuff. I put nitrous on a 4-speed 79 Trans Am, the 400 Pontiac in 94. That in the Superpowers book I have that talks about turbocharging, supercharging nitrous oxide. That's one of the examples that they have is a Trans Am with a nitrous kit in it. The van runs 890s in the 8th, 770s on nitrous. It helps a lot. Van weighs 57, almost 5,800 pounds with no driver. Small block 360, built with aluminum heads, 10-to-1 compression. So what do you think that 360 is? Do you think that that's like a 400? Does it have a decent cam in it? It's like a 400 horsepower one? Did you pick up the Rocket 350 the guy was talking about last night? I don't know where it is. Gabe, happy to help, man. I saw Speedmaster Pontiac heads at SEMA, peanut ports. Couldn't give me flow numbers. I have a set of their Pontiac heads. Durango engine today, diagnosis of knocking engine. Drag van, oh, you use Q16 with the nitrous? That's good. My parents' first new car when I was a kid was a Firebird Formula 400. What year was it? A 4-speed? That's very cool. So your dad was gangster, man. I like that. Richard, have you tried using knock sensors to retard timing? Yes and no. One of the guys that was doing that, I think he did it on a Neon. So he was just using the factory ECU, and then he was triggering the knock sensor. And then the knock sensor was, I think, retarding on his application. It might have been retarding it by 4 degrees or something. So I have seen that done. I don't think I've done it. We were going to try that. Eric and I were talking about doing a turbo kit that actually did that used the knock sensor, because we wanted to do a really cheap kit with like an FMU and that, and then that way people could just put these cheap turbo kits on and have the fuel and timing that they needed. Scott, can you start telling us the setting you do on the dyno testing, like air fuel setting, timing? I do. In the videos, I always tell you that we ran this at this air fuel and this timing, so you know what it is. I don't normally give you the whole curves on stuff. Sometimes in the tuning videos, I do that to show you what happens when you run this timing level and this one and this one and this one, and show you how much power it takes away. And this air fuel and this air fuel and this air fuel and this air fuel will show you how much power it takes away. So there's a lot of information out there. First time I learned about nitrous for some Road Warrior Lord Humongous. The bottom end of the nitrous of the Pontiac hated nitrous, only lasted 8 to 9 bottles. Why did the bottom end not like that? Were you getting detonation? I like the FLS, but they can't make Pontiac torque without a power adder. I don't think that's accurate. I think an LS of any displacement makes more torque than a Pontiac of any of the similar displacement. A Pontiac doesn't have cylinder heads to make. It doesn't have cylinder heads or anywhere near as good as an LS. My 70-wood Firebird, my dad worked at the GTO plant. Cool. $4,500, 450 nitrous. That you're, oh, at least 450 on the motor. Okay. You want to make sure that you don't use the word thoughts when you're asking a question. Don't have that in your comments. Otherwise, it won't get answered. That's one of the rules here. Well, it's really the only rule, and no politics. Four degrees of retirement. Yeah, 4 degrees of retard would be nice if you could do that. because that's about what you would need, and less if you have good octane that you're running, but that's a good safety margin. LS power is cheaper, but it's been done over and over. Rather see a real other guy's motor that make power. Yeah, though I like those too. I like all of them. Richard, why would I build a 350 when a 455 or a what? I don't know what an IAII or LAII 540 bolts in the same place. Well, a 350 and a 455 would be different motors, different blocks and stuff. Over the weekend, I finally got the suspension done on my SRT4, swapped 88 Chrysler New Yorker so that I can start tuning with HP tuners. Oh, cool. So you swapped over the whole harness and everything? No religion. We are full freedom of religion here, but I mean your freedom to choose the whatever one you want. 800 horsepower would be best for my cruiser, but do you think I can make a stock block Ford bottom end Pontiac stay together? I think it will do that at 800. I'd need to ask. I can ask Andy what level they've taken the stock blocks to. I think a 52 jet's going to get you more than 100 horsepower. Just placed a 750 Proform carb on my 305, hoping to install a small single turbo. Is it a blow-through carburetor? Indy Adventures aftermarket block, Pontiac, same heads, cam, rods, intake, everything is essentially the same except for the bore, stroke, and main journals. Yes, the large journal, bigger motors are different blocks and different cranks than the smaller ones. Will my T56 fail in first and second during 1.7 60-foot times? I don't know about the transmission. I don't test a lot of that stuff, so I don't really have an answer for that. The lighter the vehicle is, the problem is shock loading that thing. That's probably what's going to break it. Back in 95, I was pretty seat of the pants when I put the nitrous on the T engine, ended up being out of like 68 Catalina. It's all stock except tons of miles. I remember we put nitrous on my friend Harold. It used to be my brother's car, but it was a 77 Camaro with a built 350, meaning it had like fuely heads and a little camshaft or whatever in it. But it was an open diff. It might have even been like a 273 rear end. And then we put nitrous on it. And then, man, would that thing like spin that one tire. It was a one tire fryer for, I don't know, blocks and blocks, it seemed like. This is an interesting result. I wonder if this would work. Is there any way you can make a video to downplay the fast intake so I can afford it? So I hope maybe if I tell everybody that it's terrible, then it will bring the price down. Take the video down after a week. About 10 years ago, I initially did the SRT4 swap with the stock SMEC and distributor run off the cam. This spring, I swapped the SRT4 harness. Okay, cool. Trying to make a decision today to on buying a K car to turbo up as a sleeper. It's super straight for a survivor. Cool. I like those cars. I'm obviously a big fan. Total timing 34 degrees, 250 shot in Q16, no issues. What timing does the motor want when it's NA? You had it set at 200 horsepower. You learned a ton from that. It's always best, whether if you're running boost or nitrous, I always tell people the same thing. Look, start small. You don't put the like kill mode on right away. When you go out and you're going to go for a run, you don't start out sprinting as fast as you can in the first block. You ease up to that. And the same thing with nitrous. You would start with a 25 or 50 or 75 shot and then make sure that it's working. And then you can go up. Then you know that if you go up in nitrous and fuel jetting, that it's all going to work. That it's working here at this lower level. So now if we step it up to another 25 or another 50 horsepower, hey, look, it's still working. That gives you an idea. And then you can also start to see things like tailor off. Oh, it's not gaining as much when we added this kind of jetting. Oh, okay. Well, maybe we're getting to the point where it cannot process that anymore. So going up more now is getting us closer to the danger zone. If you go right past the danger zone as your first install of jetting, that's on you. You shouldn't do that. Same thing with boost. You don't go out and set your boost at 30 pounds or 40 pounds. You set your boost at 7 pounds and go out and run it and make sure that the timing and air fuel and log it, that it's all doing what it's supposed to be doing. And then start going up. Okay, it's working at 7 pounds. My map looks like it's all right. It's taking timing out as I go up and boost. It's adding fuel the way it's supposed to. Now let's turn it up a couple of pounds and see what happens. Yes, it's tracking right. Okay, let's turn it up a couple of more. It's still tracking. Because you'll get to a point where there's going to be a problem area. But if you sneak up on that problem just becomes a learning process. So you get knowledge from that and not broken pieces. That's why I always suggest going that route. This morning, I got an email from Eric Weingardner about doing testing with him. So we might be able to do something with him. That'd be cool. He does really cool stuff. I like his porting. My buddy took his heads off on his rod knocking 4.8 liter. A few heads were so the pistons were hitting the head. Is that what you're talking about, Salver? The piston to head shouldn't be that far. A lot of LS stuff, a lot of the pistons, factory pistons, are out of the bore, so they could be 8 to 10 thousandths out. Unless he put a really, really thin head gasket on there, that the stock head gasket should still give you 30 to 40 thousandths piston to head clearance. So if the bearing's not there anymore, it will definitely hit. Nitro 77 Camaro one-wheel peel. Yep, it was. It would smoke it all the way down the street. A turbo K car that looks stock and somehow hooks would be hilarious. If you get it in the 9s, that would be a lot. And as much as I admire the guys that are doing it with, guys that are doing it with sticks, because it's harder to do. It's harder to get it off the line without breaking stuff, and you have to do all those things. An automatic that just hooks and goes would be really cool. Richard, good morning. Richard, I had a 70 C10 long bed with 3 stroker, 5.7 rods, ported sportsman heads, Ross pistons, 11-1, 251 cam, 1.6 rockers, 308 gears. That'd be a good combination. Is there a way short of a carb swap to a Chevy TBI engine to make 300 horsepower? I don't know what the maximum flow rate of the fuel is for that, but we tried getting a TBI motor to run on the engine dyno, and we weren't able to do it way back. I'm fairly confident that we would be able to do it now, so that I can tune one and see how much fuel we could get to it and ultimately see where the limit would be. So I don't know. I haven't measured. I don't know what the factory injectors are of even the big block injectors, which is what you would put on there to get more fuel. So you put the big block throttle body because it's a bigger throttle body, and then it also has bigger injectors. And then you could do, they have aftermarket intakes for those. I think ultimately what you would do is make an adapter and then put an RPM air gap intake manifold on there if you wanted a better intake manifold. Because I'm pretty sure that that's going to be better than the aftermarket TBI setup. And then it'd be interesting to monitor vacuum and see how restrictive the throttle body was. The other way you could do it is put two of those and put a dual quad on there to get more air and fuel flow. I wish I could share a picture of my 85 Plymouth Reliant coupe on the chat. Yeah, that would be cool. Foot brake 3200, 180 shot on the hit, all in half a second. 167, 60 foot, 6,000 plus. Don't know what any timing is. You leave it on the nitrous tube. I just wondered if if you run the thing NA without the nitrous, how much timing do you have in it? Do you have more timing in it without the nitrous? A413s with manual valve bodies for the K cars. Yep, they're guys are running really fast with those. It's tough to get an 8 valve K in the 9s. It's hard to make lots and lots of power with those because of you're limited in the 8 valve head flow. Are you able to mate a 4.2 liter inline Atlas head on older 250 block? Are they different? Are the bore spacings different? I don't know anything about the 250 block. I mean, I know a little bit because we did testing way back, or we did a story with the guys from Clifford, I think, on the 230 and 250 stuff way back, and on powered things that they did. But I don't know off the top of my head, I don't know what the bore spacing is in relative to the 4.2 liter. Holley makes TBI 90-pound injectors. Didn't they have, what was the old Holley? Was it Commander? Was that their old fuel injection stuff? Michael, yeah, you should go all in on the K car. That's a definite yes. Wonder how effective the fuel cooling is from a wet fogger. There should definitely be something there. It might allow you to add more timing. Mexico City's in the house. Single father, standalone meth tank, 100 shot. My bottle's still sitting between my car seats and the transmission wheel. I know that when I installed the bottle in my 5-liter Mustang way back in the day, when I was drilling they had that parcel cover that's the spare tire cover. So I was drilling through that to mount the brackets for the bottle. Drilled right through my spare tire. So it's pretty important to take the spare tire out when you're drilling that thing. Holley projection, yeah. What's a safe EGT? You shouldn't be thinking about EGT. You should be thinking about air fuel. And more than that, you should be thinking about timing. Yeah, on the spare tire that kind of scared me when I popped it too. But how do we fix that? Plug in the sidewall because that's how we roll. In fact, I drove on those spare tires, that and another one that also had a plug in it, but not in the sidewall like that one did. That had another had a plug, but in the tread area because it had a flat. I drove those, put those on the front of the car so I wouldn't wear out my good R1 TAs, my soft compound tires, when I was driving up the Virginia City hill climb to race up there. So I was driving with my spare tires in the front. The problem with nitrous where I live in Green Bay is the closest place to get a bottle filled at 3 hours away. Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, this was way back in the day when I did that. I don't think I would do that anymore. Have you tested plasma man LS intake manifolds? I have not. I do a fairly considerable amount of self installs for tires. Drilling arrow catch latches on my Fox body cowl hood, forget hood pins and a couple months back, or forgot hood pins. Pretty amazing how high fiberglass hood flies at 110 miles an hour. Yeah, and it's bad when it smashes the windshield if it comes up, or if it just came off all the way. That's actually better, although it's bad for the people that are behind you. But I have had a hood come up and smash into the window. It's not good. Bob, so the 96 G30 van used Vortec engines with TBI. Okay, that would definitely be better. Those heads are definitely better. What exactly is a nitrous cam? I don't. Nitrous cams might be something for really, really high horsepower nitrous guys, but otherwise it's just a cam. Just take your motor and put a cam in it and have the cam do what you want the cam to do, and then add nitrous to that. Because nitrous is just going to add up from whatever is there, just like with boost. Try warming a bottle with it in your trunk. Yeah. TBI cams came with worse cams than heads. Honestly, the first thing you do is fix the TBIs to cam it. Can guys with TBIs can they program? Are there fixes for their computers? Because I remember on the early TBI stuff that the computers were very, very slow. Why are Utah and Colorado charging premium prices for 87? 179, 195 at 50. The 7747 box is super hackable. I like that. Bob, I think you'd be hard pressed to double the power output with not with nitrous. That's hard to do. My project today is fixing a bathroom door that won't shut, bleeding radiators, getting numbers off of AC filter, removing spotlight fixture. Wish I could run a quarter mile, but bubble top has a sticker not to exceed 95 miles an hour. I saw in a video, I have that video up, that nitrous reduces airflow. Yeah, it does reduce airflow because it displaces what's going in there. And that's part of the problem, is that you'll get to a point where the motor will no longer process any more nitrous. Salvador, there is a limit to how much you can go with a controller based on your initial spring rate. Buddy of mine says he's paying $1.25 less per gallon for fuel in New Mexico. Arizona and New Mexico are typically lower than California, and so is Nevada. Although the closer you get to the border, the higher it gets. That's the way that it was when I did the last trip, when I drove out to Ohio. What do you think about the 454 small block? Which one specifically are you talking about? A blueprint 454? Yeah, big displacement small blocks are good as long as you have enough cylinder head on them. California is typically higher in gas prices, and I don't know why, since we're so close to the refineries and all of the ports where they would offload fuel here. Obviously, the oil companies are making lots of money. Probably because people will pay it. It's higher than just taxes, though. It's not just taxes. The change rate is different than just the extra taxes that we have on it. Currently, I'm trying to decide if the 671 will go on a stock 400 block 461 with unported E-heads. Of course it will. Overreach of the government is why the oil companies are charging too much money. I don't think that that's actually what's going on. Anti-smog formulations. I know that California's formulation is different than other places, but we have differences in formulation all over the country, though, because you have different formulations for altitude and stuff that's not specific to what this state is. That's more of how well the fuel works, and then how well it will ignite at really cold temperatures and stuff. Yeah, high altitude gas is definitely different. What do you enjoy most about engine dyno? I love seeing the dyno curves. I love seeing some sort of change. I like doing something and hoping that it works, But even finding out that it doesn't is also good information, because every time we do this, we learn something. I mean, if I put a truck Norris cam in something, I kind of have a pretty good idea what it's going to do. Although everybody, for some reason, I want to see it in a 6 liter. Like it's not going to work in 6 liter. It's going to make power in a 6 liter. But doing new stuff is cool. Like I'm excited about doing this test on all the different spark plugs, the different metallurgies, and the different like electrode designs, and then side gapping and zero gapping and all of that. It will be interesting to see, because we, going through the automotive, or being in the automotive industry for, going through decades now, where you hear all this stuff that people say, oh yeah, it's this. And then, people believe that when, before I did the Big Bang, oh yeah, you'll blow that motor up on 10 pounds. I'm like, how does the connecting rod or the piston know what boost level it's at? How can that actually be a thing? Boost is not a good thing anyway. It's not a good measurement. It's just like the ring gap versus boost. Well, how much boost can I run on stock ring gap? I don't know. 100 pounds? Is it going to know that it has that much boost? There's just not a direct correlation. But people want that. They really want there to be these, like, strictly like black and white things. Oh, here, you can run this much on this much. And Richard said, you can go do that. So I can go do that. And then I can drive around and be safe, knowing that that's the case, because I'm too lazy to actually put ring gap in it. But all these guys are doing it. I'm like, look, when I get that argument, I'm like, look, you want to not take it apart. I understand that. I don't want to take it apart. I haven't taken the L33 apart exactly for that reason. I don't want to take it apart and go through. And the same thing with the Dodge. The Dodge still doesn't have ring gap in it. The Mopar or the Magnum doesn't have ring gap in it. I understand what that is. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to. If you're getting a motor from the wrecking yard, it's less problematic. If you're having to take the motor out because you're putting a turbo in, that's more work. But if you think about it in long-term stuff, if you do that, that part of it is now taken out of the equation. So if you get the motor apart, go through whatever it takes, however long it takes to do it and get it done, now that's not an issue. Now your tune or other things that can break the motor could be the issue. But if you don't do that, you don't know. And then what will happen is when you're out having fun and it breaks, then it's going to be in an inopportune time and place. I can guarantee you that. And again, it's not absolute in either way. It's not absolute that if you don't run ring gap and you run boost, if you don't add ring gap and you run boost, it's going to break. I can't tell you that because I've run it many, many times and run around with stock motors running boost, although not, 30 pounds. But I've done that a lot and it's not broken. But I've also gone the other way where we've run it and it's broken. So I tend to steer more toward the safe side. Let's see. I'll put a $20 bill on there. There's no more than 2% outright power differences on the 450 horsepower engine between all plug materials provided. The plugs are all new and gap similarly. Sorry, but you were wrong on fuel taxes. California has the highest fuel tax in the U.S. It does, but the change in price is way more than taxes are. So that's not it. That's part of it, but that's not it. There's also a big chunk of something else that is not related to taxes. I think Dan said something like that too. Oh yeah, they're wanting to do an EFI nitrous 5.3 for intake manifold choice. How about a 4150 intake with a plate, a 90-degree elbow for the throttle body for better distribution? I think a single plane intake will have better distribution running nitrous into that, certainly, and certainly at higher nitrous levels than it would going through a truck manifold. How much of that and how much more you can run, I don't really know. I haven't tested those two things to see how much better the distribution is. A single plane manifold is still not great. And it's changing with RPM. Where the distribution is good and bad changes with RPM because you have different runner lengths. We have ballpark figures to work with. You don't gap your range. You are taking a chance because that's the biggest thing on the plug gap situation. There are other things that we could talk about that would be the same, but on the plug gap deal, the problem is you just don't know. If you could look in there and go, look, it already has 22,000, so I could get away with a lot, or it has 13,000, so I'm not going to really get away with a lot. The problem is you don't know which one of those two things. I've never seen them. I don't think I've ever seen them at 24. Mostly in the high to from low to high teens is normally where I've seen them. Let's see. I ran the 214, 224, which is big brother on the three. I have some 350 Pontiac stuff coming up. I have a Ram Air 3, I think, and a Ram Air 4 camshaft that I'm planning to run on them. I need to get springs though for it. Richard's making a face like he wants to try and take my $20. I don't want your $20. And I'm actually fairly certain that with metallurgy, we're not going to see a change. I don't think we'll see anything from any of the plugs. I don't think we'll see anything from indexing. I don't think we'll see anything from side gapping or zero gapping or metallurgy or fancy design. But I want to test it and see. And I'm also going to run the middle number gap thing for these people that think going from 10,000s to 100,000s didn't show us what the whole range is going to do. I'll put a 40 or 50 or whatever in there to show them that it doesn't go, this lost a little bit of power and this may have gained a little bit of power, but there's not a huge big gain right in the middle there because people want that to be the thing. And I don't think that's the case. Part of California's higher gas prices, there isn't an easy way to get crude oil there, except from ships and all of the harbors that we have, like San Pedro and Long Beach, San Francisco Bay, Richmond. High demand and population, and that's probably more like it. Just picked up a Butler built Pontiac 409, 350, 40 over, 4250 stroke. Can't wait to see what happens. That should be good. I want to build one of the 462 because I have a 400, so we want to do a stroker with that. And then the 350, I don't think we'll get a stroker assembly. Dizzy, I have a 347 streetcar track warrior. I want a 11 to 1, good size cam, 4 more RPM, carb 750. Take a look at I have some 347 videos up where we ran stuff like that. The cams that we use were normally that XFI, like a 236, 248 cam, and then lots of good heads. We ran RPM air gap manifolds, and I think a 750. We might have run a little bit bigger carburetor than that. But on 11 to 1, the bigger the cam that you use, the less octane you can use. Probably. I think 95 or 98. This must be in Australia, I'm guessing. And so that's going to be like our 93. And we run all of these on 91 on the engine dyno. But out in the car, 93 would be better. What's your opinion of the LT platform? I think that they're good. They make really good power. My bet is NGK Iridiums have the highest horsepower. We do have some Denso Iridiums. Is the Rammer 3 cam the 068 cam? I think it is the 4-speed cam, not the automatic. And I want to build, and that's one of the things I want to do with this 305. I need a set of 48 heads for it because I want to put together a 350 HO. I want to do a replica of that and show people what it did. I thought that they didn't they, on the HO 350, wasn't that block notch? Weren't those 350 blocks notched? Back before I knew anything about nitrous, we sprayed a stock bottom N53 with a 125 shot on the dyno with 60 plug gap. A 60 plug gap might be okay with a 125 shot. I don't think you're gonna worry. I don't think anything. The only thing that would happen is you would get misfire if that was a problem. You have 35 degrees of timing in an LS. That's way more timing than that motor needs. If you don't have a notch block, hit me up. I have a set of OEHGs and have the notches in them. I think that I have. This is an early 350 block, if I remember right. I'm hoping that it is. The HO block was notched for the 48 heads. I thought it was. Any open chamber 72 cc head will work the same with the 48s. But the 48 head is going to be a smaller chamber than that, though, right? Isn't the 48 head like a 66 or a 68 chamber? $35 degrees. It's Honda VTEC timing. Your Honda shouldn't have 35 degrees either. There was a 326 HO too. That's right. And getting away with 38 degrees. It's not a matter of getting away. It's a matter of what the thing wants to run at and make best power at. I could see an LT motor wanting the Gen 2 LT1 wanting more. Or is that, what year LT1 is that? If it's a second gen, I could see it wanting more timing. I'm not sure what the timing is on the direct injection stuff. It's interesting that, but people think that more timing is better, and it's not. More timing could be less power and then more detonation. Yeah. Let's see. Cam recommendation for 351 Windsor ported GT40P heads, a 2,500 pound streetcar, 150 shot. I don't know how much spring you have on the GT40 head, or what intake manifold or anything that you have on there. The 350 HO 40. All of the specs that I've read about the 48 heads were 66 to 68 cc chambers. I'm not an expert. I'm just going by what I read. Pontiac changed the valve label in 67. Yeah, the HO was, what year was the HO? That was 69. So it was after the angle change. I assume more timing is better at wide open throttle. It's not. That's why we run the timing at the like when we do it on the dyno, we add timing until it stop raising the power. If you keep adding timing, there will be no power gain. And if you keep adding time beyond that, you'll see power loss, and then you'll see parts loss. So that's what happens with timing. More doesn't keep adding power. (5.3) we sprayed was carbureted. Edelbrock ignition box. All I can do is change clips. Can't provide a curve. The chips will have 35 degrees at the top for some reason. We haven't seen them want any more than 32. The one, well, on a 5.3, on any LS, really, 32 is about what they want. The one exception is that because there seems to be about a 2-degree delay difference in timing on the ignition controller versus what we see when we run like a Holly or a Fast on it. And then the one difference is that if you're running, for whatever reason, you would be running 317 heads on it. Those tend to want another degree or so of timing. Summit made 13 horsepower on granitoid coils. No, that's not a real thing. I've never seen coils add power unless they cured a misfire. And a Hemi with individual coils are not going to have misfire. We didn't have a poll today. Yeah, Marty, just because one, as you found out, just because the original small block Chevy wanted 35, 36, 37, 38, whatever degrees of timing, especially like the smog heads that had really big chambers on them, those would want a lot of timing on a small block. But on an LS, they don't, that chamber design doesn't want a bunch of timing on it. And neither does a 4-valve motor. What is a boosted mod motor like for timing? I honestly don't even remember, but I'm thinking that they were low though. I'm thinking that they were 29 or 30 NA, and that we would have run less under boost. Thumper, I run comp 995 springs on the hydraulic Cam Pontiacs, even the rollers, provided the lift is short enough. I'll have to take a look at that 995 spring and see. So I do need to get springs for the, I'm sure that the 350, I'm almost, well, I don't know for sure. I'm thinking it's a stock cam and a stock head and a stock spring. Make sure when you're asking a question, you do not use the word thoughts. Those won't get answered. Isn't timing almost directly correlated to RPM and head design? I've always found that better quality heads with better chamber design require less timing. It is. It's chamber size and chamber design, and then RPM. Timing, forget about the starting and ending point, but timing increases with engine speed because you have to ignite that earlier at higher speeds because there's less time for that to happen. I have never seen going from one good coil to another good coil, or coils in this case, like LSs or Hemis or whatever. I have never seen coils make power. Do you have any interest in racing the 24 hours of lemons? I have done that already. When we did it in a Honda CRX, I think. Mike, how much timing do you have in your, is this a turbo motor that you're doing this on? How about a Chevy 400 with a tune port injection setup and a Holly controller? Is a big block torque? Yeah, take a look at what kind of, we made 500 foot-pounds with or over 500 foot-pounds with a 383 and a tune port. So yeah, that's definitely possible. Have you tested Higgins heads from Australia? I don't think so. They don't ring a bell. I'm running an L83 with an LT4 high side pump, LT4 injectors, high lift cam, 450 Walboro fuel pump, 044 Bosch inline pump. So you have more than enough feed pump going into the LT4 high pressure pump. On E85, I don't know. 730 wheel horsepower and E85. I'd have to ask the guys. I'd have to ask James Shore. He might know. I think that they've run the LT4 stuff on the engine dyno, and I'll have to ask him how much power that they've run with that to see where they got to. But I think that that's going to be in the range. I'm sure you could get that on gas, but I don't know about on E85. Do you ever check air density or density altitude when you dyno motors? Yeah, the dyno does that already. Dyno has a weather station. How much head flow do you need to get peak power at 7,000 RPM? That's not the head flow is not the question. The cam timing and the intake design would have much more of a function on that than you would with head flow. There are lots of different head flows that you could have that would make peak power at 7,000 RPM. It may change the amount of power that you make at 7,000 RPM. The dual plugs were only for emissions thing. That probably helps on the Hemi, because if the Hemi is a bad chamber design. Top fuel cars run twin plugs. Yeah, they're struggling to ignite what they got going on. Two plugs per cylinder, two 44 amp magnetos. $13,000 to $17,000 RPM, or not the motor, right? You're not talking about. It helps emissions by improving brake-specific fuel consumption, which also increases peak horsepower potential. But the emissions production and horsepower are done with dramatically different throttle angles. So if you're worried about emissions, you're worried about really light part throttle stuff. If you're worried about horsepower, that's wide open throttle stuff. Those are different things. Drag van. If you're making 613 at the wheels, that's got to be 700 at the flywheel. Will single plane with a turbo still make good torque at 3,000 to 4,000 RPM? It depends on how big your turbo is and what size the motor is and how much torque you were making there to begin with. A single plane is going to make less torque and have lower or worse boost response than a dual plane in that RPM range. It just will, because the intake manifold is going to dictate that. But it might be that you're already at, certainly by 4,000 RPM, you should already be in torque. I don't know how high you're revving this thing, but it might be at 3,000 or 3,500 or 4,000 that you're already in an area where, even if one is making 30 foot-pounds less, that even given that it's already making more than enough to spool the turbo. So if you can already spool the turbo, you're going to have enough torque there anyway with boost. Dual plugs are trying to get a more complete burn. Burns, you've gotten Honda K series heads to flow 500 CFM. Yeah, Dan, I asked the same question. That seems like a lot. And the difference between 450 and 500 is a chasm. I mean, I'd love to have all the Pontiac fans over to sub on my channel. We do Pontiacs here too. I like Pontiacs. They're good. Would a multi-spark ignition do the same thing as multi-plugs? It might, but the plug position may get to areas of the chamber better. But an MSD is what I wanted to put on the Civic VX so that we could ensure that we didn't have misfire during ultra lean burn running. And I think it would have helped a lot. Well, Harley Davidson picked up actual miles per gallon plus power going to twin plug because of flame front across the top of the very tall dome. That's the problem with the chamber design of a Hemi, and having to have a dome piston is terrible for flame travel. That's why having multiple plugs is really good, because basically you have a two-sided combustion chamber, and so you have one plug on each side, kind of. The dyno has a correction factor based on the weather station. And so it corrects from actual reading to a corrected reading. And that varies daily, hourly, minutely, based on what the temperature changes, what the pressure changes, all of that. I would like to test AMC stuff. Burn. So you have a full billet head, different design from stock. Okay, so you're not, because we were asking whether if you were porting stock heads and getting those. So are you running those on a billet head? Are you running those on like the nitromethane NA motors that they're running? Nitrous, you can run nitrous on Hemis. We've run that a lot. Have you put a Whipple supercharger on an L67? I have done a Kenny Bell, which is a twin screw like a Whipple. Iron Duke plus turbo. I don't think so. I disagree with the Iron Duke plus boost. I think if you have a good running Iron Duke and you add boost to it, I'm sure that it will work at like 7 pounds or whatever. Or I want it to work at 7 pounds. I think we only ran like low 400s or something with the Kenny Bell and the L67. The video's up. You can take a look. I'd have to go look up the dyno data and see. Because we didn't run it on one that had a cam. I think it may have had ported heads at the time. So Dan, you guys ran 500 shots where you added 500 horsepower everywhere in the RPM range. That would be a lot of torque. What's good cam for a 351 Windsor? Again, it depends on what you're trying to do. You need to be more specific than that. Is a good cam that's going to run at 7,800 RPM is different than a good cam that you want for a RV application. So, but those are both good cams. It's just your definition is going to be different than what other people's will be. You lost me a good running Iron Duke. I just mean the one that's running. I've seen Iron Dukes live at 5 to 6 pounds, but any real boost? That is real boost. 6 pounds is real. Low boost is real boost. The low boost needs love too. And just think, at 6 pounds, you've improved the power output by 40 something percent. What's an L87? Is that the 6.2? Is that the one step up above an L86? You put a cam and springs in it. Yep, low boost matters. 7 psi, my 671 make a bajillion horsepowers. Yep. It'll make less than a 50% gain. I guarantee that. A 671 takes a pretty good bit of power to drive, but they do look sweet, especially on a Pontiac. I want to run one on the Trophy 4-cylinder. How much displacement? The displacement isn't the question. How much power does the NA motor have to make to ingest a 500 shot? If you had a 1,000 horsepower NA motor, 500 shot, not a problem. GTA Nation, yours will be the last question. It's time to get going. I have to do some editing on a video. Good morning, sir. I've ordered a BTR truck Norris cam for my 05 5.3 liter Vortec 706 heads Tahoe with a Magnus supercharger. Should I also upgrade my stall converter from 2400 to 3000? you should only do that if you're wanting to drag race it. A 2400 should be more than enough. And what's going to happen is if you haven't run this combination yet, this cammed 5.3 with a Magnus on it, if you had a 2400 RPM stall converter that was designed for a 2400 RPM with a stock 5.3, it's going to be much higher with the combination that you have. Yeah, Michael, I have no experience with an Iron Duke. I just want that to be a thing. I want that to happen. And on that note, it's time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. Go get your projects done. Morning motivations. Another successful morning. I'm going to be editing, and then we'll see you guys all tonight on the live feed at 7. Bow, 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 bow. And I promise to have a poll.